Good morning everyone, and welcome back to my little corner of the internet. My name is Kristen. I'm the maker behind this little corner of YouTube, Do So Knits, where I share with you how knitting and other fiber crafts have woven into my life. Most of the time it's knitting, but sometimes other things sneak in as well. Today is episode 75 of my podcast, where I share all the finished objects, works in progress, future things I want to work on, all that kind of stuff for a sit-down episode. So I hope you have something cozy to drink. I do not have much admin here at the beginning today. Just if you'd like to follow me other places, I am Do So Knits here on YouTube, Ravelry, Instagram, and Lewsky. And then down in the description box, I do include links to all my Ravelry project pages, in addition to adding chapter codes. So if you ever want to jump around to a specific project, that is all included down there in the description box, and should be on like the little hover timer thing on the video if you ever wanted to see what we were going to chat about. Yeah, so today is going to be a standard podcast episode. It has been about 1 month since I last recorded. I had hoped and planned to record about 2 weeks ago, but then I caught a cold that's been going around here in Denver, and it wiped me out, and I basically slept all that weekend. So here we are about a month after my last video, so I have a good amount of things to show you today. So I hope you have something to work on or something that you're doing while we sit and chat today, and we'll just go ahead and go right into the finished objects that I have. So the first finished object that I have is what I am wearing today. I love this sweater, and I've worn it once, but I had to hold off to not wear it too much before I could sit down and record. But this is my study session sweater, which I test knit for Samantha Guerin. It is a drop shoulder V-neck sweater with a lace panel all down this front, and it has options for either balloon or tapered sleeves. I think the terminology she uses is tapered or non-tapered sleeves. I knit this with a DK weight yarn. It is designed with a 2 lace weights held together. So those are the options for yarn weight for this sweater. I used, like I said, DK weight yarn. I used Brooklyn Tweed's Reply Rambouillet, which was a special run. I really hope Brooklyn Tweed comes back with this yarn, because it was one of my favorite yarns I have ever knit with. So it was a 6-ply yarn, DK weight, in this beautiful green color. So the color that I used was the colorway Refuge. So it's this beautiful green color. The Brooklyn Tweed Reply Rambouillet comes in 45 gram balls, and so I ended up using 11 skeins total, plus a little bit of the 12th skein, for a total of 503 grams total. And it was 1,453 yards. I did knit the size 5, which comes out to a 48-inch bust. So it's not a ton of positive ease at my bust, but based on like my upper bust measurement, that is the recommended ease in the pattern. And then I did do a couple of modifications in the pattern as well. Mostly being I added 12 rounds of short row bust starts at the front. So 6 short rows on each side. That added about an inch and a half to my overall like bust area, an extra bit of fabric. I was trying to see if I could find the gauge of this pattern. I did hit the gauge. So the gauge for this pattern is 21 stitches over 4 inches. So at 12 stitches added, that's about an inch and a quarter added at my bust. And then the only other modification I made is I did not do a folded over collar for this pattern. I just did a single collar and then did the tubular bind off at the neck. For some reason, I looked at the folded collar and I didn't want like that extra like little puff. I just wanted this classic flat kind of collar, and I'm very happy with that. Otherwise, I did do the non-tapered sleeves. I knitted exactly to the length that Samantha recommended. The body's exactly to the recommended lengths that she said, and I love this sweater. It was such a fun pattern to knit. The like building of the V-neck is really fun, and then knitting the body is, I really enjoyed knitting it. I actually ended up knitting the whole body, and then I had originally done vertical bust darts, and when I had done them, so with vertical bust darts you like do increases to accommodate your bust and then decreases. So I had these like shapes like this on the sides, but I did them too low. So imagine, I'm actually going to get this. So imagine, maybe if I rotate her this way, yeah, you can see the bust here. So essentially with vertical bust darts, you do increases to kind of add some more fabric, ideally with the most fabric at the apex of your bust, and then decreases out so that it mirrors this, and you're adding extra fabric for the extra tissue at your widest point here. However, when I added these, my like apex was like down here. So if the bust apex was here, my most of the fabric was like here, and then I decreased out, and it just drove me crazy. I was like, is this going to bother me? I sat on it for a night, and I was like, it is going to bother me. And I was on a deadline, but I ripped back my entire body. I was ready to start the ribbing. Ripped back past all those increases and decreases, and then I was like, you know what? This pattern is actually suitable. I can do short row bust darts, which what happens with short row bust darts is you just knit extra rows at the front to kind of accommodate, you have a little more fabric here versus in the back, which then helps your sweater lay flat. Because the patterning doesn't go all the way around, the patterning is just on the front, I could add those short row bust darts just staying in pattern. Samantha wrote this pattern so that when you're knitting flat, every time you're on a right side is like a pattern row where you might have to do the cables or the lace, but if you're knitting flat back purl wise, everything on that return row is just plain stockinette, so you're just essentially just purling on the way back. So that made that really easy to incorporate those short row bust darts because I was able to just stay in pattern, you can't tell, and it adds to the fit. And I'm very happy I did that. I was like, I basically knit the whole body after the underarms within like a few days because I was trying to hit the test knit deadline. But even saying that, knitting the body twice, I enjoyed every minute of it. It's such a fun pattern, and I really love this shape, and it's something that I will keep in my arsenal to knit another sweater with this shape. Maybe I'll omit the like the lace texture, but just keep the overall drop shoulder V-neck. I really love how it looks. So with that, I do think I've kind of talked about most of this. The pattern is now out. It has 9 sizes. It goes from a 32-inch bust all the way up to a 64-inch bust with recommended ease of 4 to 8 inches. So I love this sweater. And I was honestly surprised, 508 grams. I was like, that's pretty good for a sweater for a 48-inch bust. So I'm very happy with this. I actually have a knitting group that I'm going to today, and I put this on for this video, and now that I've recorded, I can wear it out in public, and I'm so excited to just have this in my wardrobe. And I think DK weight sweater is just so comfortable. The DK weight and like my Traveler's a sport weight hoodie, I feel like this fingering sport DK weight is just really ideal for a sweater for me and where I live. So that is my study session sweater. I highly recommend you check it out. I love Samantha's patterns, and thank you again, Samantha, for letting me test. I will stop waxing and waiting about this, but I do really, really love it. So my study session is my main finished object that I have finished. Both of my other finished objects that I'm about to show you kind of transition into whips, but I have finished a portion of them. So we're going to put them in the finished object section today, and then we'll kind of transition into my sole works in progress in a moment. So my next finished object is some finished spinning. So last podcast I talked about a combo spin that I was doing. It was Nest Fiber Club and a Into the World Fiber Club. They were both 4 ounces, and I was spinning them to do a 2-ply together, and I have finished that. And so here is one of the skeins. It came out to be about 2 skeins total, and these were each about 100 grams and about a sport weight 2-ply yarn. It didn't tone down. My goal with this was the initial Nest Fiber Club was like a blue and orange. That was a little bright. And so I paired it with an Into the World Fiber Club that was a little moodier, darker, but had some orange and reds and purples and darker blues that I was hoping would tone down some of the brightness. But I think what happened is the brightness from the Nest Club kind of brightened up some of the Into the World instead of vice versa toning it down. I'm very happy with like my consistency and how this came out. But I'm realizing this just like is not my colors. So what I think I might do is I might see if some of my friends want some of this hand spun. Because sometimes, yeah, like I've mentioned before, I spin to spin, not always knowing what I want in the end. And so these aren't necessarily of my colors, but maybe some of my friends would enjoy some hand spun. So I did cake up the second skein. So this is kind of what it looks like in a cake instead. I think the colors are really fun. It's just not knitting up the way I hoped it would. Because the reason I caked this up yesterday is because I really want to do a hand-spun Harlow hat. The Harlow hat is a brioche hat by Andrea Mowry. And so I started this yesterday thinking like, okay, well maybe I'll like how it knits up. And I like knitting this pattern, but this is just not my colors. So this is kind of what it looks like knit up so far. I've done about 1 inch. So it's just striping a little bit more than I hoped. I mean, I think the brioche itself is fine, but it's just not my colors. I think it looks a little, like from a distance especially, I think it looks a little muddy. Yeah, so that's just where I'm at. I am going to just frog this, and I thought about not even showing it today, but I realized I don't always show what I frog because I usually decide about frogging very quickly. So like I was gonna just frog this because I know I don't like it, and I plan to just recake up the yarn. I'm probably just gonna reskein it up and see if any of my friends want it because it's just not my colors. I enjoyed spinning it, but I don't know what I would put it in. And I even started this hat kind of as a like, I'll start it and I'll just put it in like my gift bin. But I just don't know if I love it. Maybe this isn't the pattern for this yarn, and I really want to make a hand spun Harlow, and I have some other skeins up here Well, my Handspun's got it on this shelf above my head in the screen. So I might just pick a different skein, start over, because I looked at like projects of people doing handspun Harlows and I really like how they look. I want to do a 1-color one, not a 2-color. So that's just kind of where I'm at. It was a good experiment to see, you know, people talk about combo spins, and so it's kind of hard to admit. I still don't always know, like looking at the roving, what that will translate to as finished yarn. So I feel like this was a good experiment with that. I have photos of the roving beforehand and the finished ply together. I enjoyed making it. I'm very happy that I'm successfully getting sport weight finishes as yarn in the end. When I did cake this up yesterday, I did use my EEW yardage counter. And so this was about 100 grams and 200 yards. And I am just curious how that compares to like spin cycle. So these are like 50 grams and 200 yards, but the thickness is about the same. So I think my grist, which is like the amount of fiber in a section, is very dense. So I feel like I'm making very dense yarns. I feel like I could make my yarns a little less dense. So if you have any tips on how to fix that. Because what's interesting is I am spinning thin, but it's still dense. So I don't know what I'm doing in that vein. So if you have any tips, I'd greatly appreciate it. But this is another finished object for the month. So I did get 8 ounces of fiber out of my stash this month, which is exciting. I'm just not super in love with what it looks like knit up, but I think that's mostly because it's just not my colors. Yeah, so that is my second finished object. Alrighty, so my third and final finished object is a dishcloth. So I was just feeling like I need something quick, and I'm kind of just in between projects. And so I had knit or crocheted a Tunisian crochet baby blanket for my nephew about a year ago. And I just really loved the texture that the Tunisian simple stitch made, and I'd been wanting to put it in some dishcloths. So I just did a dishcloth using Tunisian crochet simple stitch. And so this used shiny happy cotton, some leftovers that I had. I'm unsure of the color, but this dishcloth used about 35 grams of yarn, and it was leftover cotton that I already had. So I just like did a chain of about 30 Tunisian simple stitches and then just kept working on it back and forth until it was a square. I really love how the fabric looks. So you get this kind of like basket weave kind of looking on the front, and then it's different on the back. Tunisian simple stitch does curl, as you can see. It does want to do that. So I did debate on doing like single crochets around, but I asked my husband Shane, and he was like, it's a dishcloth. No one's going to care. And once it's wet, it probably won't curl as much. So let me know, what would you do? Would you do a single crochet around or just kind of let it be? So these are the V's along the side. I think that looks really nice, and there's V's along the top. But it does curl. So I don't know. Let me know what you would do. So then I did start a corner to corner Tunisian simple stitch, and this is a I'm like, it preview is the word, tutorial instructions by TLC Yarn Crafts, Tony Lipsy. So I started this one, and I don't know if you can kind of see, but I messed up somewhere, and it's not a square, it is a rectangle. I have just started decreasing, but it is definitely a rectangle and I don't like it. I do not like doing this with the increases versus just knitting this back and forth. And I got to about here and I have this much left of my yarn. So I also planned to just frog this, and I want to just restart and do another one like a square like this instead. I don't mind if I have to switch to another color and like do like a color block at the end. But the fact that this is a rectangle and not a square does bother me. And I know it shouldn't because it's a dishcloth. But I don't like it. So I'm going to frog this. I'm going to start over. So I do have two things today that I plan to frog, but they're so small that I don't necessarily mind. Yeah. So I do use, this is a Tunisian crochet interchangeable set that I have. I got this from, it's not Knit Picks. I'll have it linked down below. It's, let me just grab it. So this is the set that I have. It's the same, it's the Knitter's Pride Symphony. So they're all wood. This is the set. It comes with 3 different cord lengths and then the little stoppers at the end. So I'm using the J size crochet hook and then the smallest cord. I didn't even bother to put the stopper on because the dishcloth isn't that long. So I've not used other Tunisian crochet hook sets. I do like this one. I've not had any issues. I like that they have a nice point. And this is the set that I did use when I crocheted the baby blanket for my nephew. Yeah, I really like this set. I had used the Symphony knitting needles before I had upgraded to the Chiaogu ones. And yeah, I do prefer metal, but I don't think there's not many metal Tunisian crochet hooks. So I will be ripping this out as well and starting anew. But I'm trying to make some dishcloths because my mom has requested some more. So I'd like to get some done for her, and I have a good amount of cotton in my stash that I've realized I've bought a while ago and have not gotten through. So just trying to get through a little bit of that stash, and it's just nice to sometimes have something a little quicker on the needles. And right now I am feeling a little in between projects and I don't know exactly what I want to work on. I'm kind of in this like brainstorming phase of projects where I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. So these will probably be something nice to just keep me busy while I figure out what I want to cast on next. So I also really love this color, so I'm probably going to keep these for myself because I like this color a lot, and then I'll work on some other colors for my mom. Okay, so I do have one more finished object that I forgot about that I would like to chat about quickly, and these are my WAN Advent Socks, which I knit for my husband Shane. I had originally started this as a musselburgh hat and then pivoted to make him a pair of socks. So these are the WAN socks. It is the Advent from 2024. I knit these for my husband Shane on US zeros, 9-inch circulars, 60 stitches. I did do a 2x2 ribbing and then a shadow wrap heel. I did 10 of the stripes on the leg, and then I ended up getting to 23 stripes total. So there are 13 stripes on the leg. So I didn't exactly use all 24 colors, but these look very, very cool. So these were really fun to knit. I really love WAN sock base, which is a Targhee and nylon blend. It's the same blend that I get in my WAN sock club. And so these are just my on-the-go meeting knitting socks. So I did start them in January, finished in February, and very excited to have these done. I do have a good amount of the yarn left over, so I may knit a pair with the leftovers for myself. Maybe I'll do some DRK everyday socks and start them toe up, just because then I can knit to the full extent. I knit myself socks with 56 stitches, so they are a little bit smaller, and my foot length is a bit smaller too, so I know I'll be able to get a pair of socks out of the remainders for myself. But I really like how these look. I always think putting socks on a pair of sock blockers are really fun, and I know it's a little after Advent season, but they are really, really fun. I love all the colors. I really like this section. This section was really like reds and peaches, but then we kind of transition into the more cool tones, and I really like that section. So this was another finished object for February. Alright, so that is all my finished objects. Some of them are a little bit of whips as well, whips that are going to be frogged, but we now can move into all of my current works in progress, things that I have been working on. So the thing that has gotten the most focus and attention has been my Miles shirt jacket, which is a pattern by Ozetta. And I have made some really great progress on this over the last month. I'm almost done. So this is where she's at. She's very large and big. It is an Aran weight pattern. I am knitting the size 4, which is a 52-inch bust at the end, and I am on the sleeves. So what I'm going to do to make this a little easier, I'm going to pop it onto my little bust form here, and then we'll chat. Look at her! Okay, so this is my Miles shirt jacket, and so last time I was about here on the body, so I still had a little bit of in the round knitting to go before I started working on the hems at the bottom. So if you remember, I did add a steek panel to this pattern, because what you do is you cast on and you knit the back section for the sleeves, pick up, come back, knit the front sections, and then we have some knitting back and forth before we start working on the hem here at the bottom. It's about 9 inches of in the round knitting, so what I did is I added 7 stitches in the middle here for a steek panel. I have, since the last episode, I went in and I did a zigzag stitch on my sewing machine. Because when I did the steek panel, I did 3 knit stitches, 1 purl stitch, and then 3 knit stitches. So on each side of that purl stitch, I went in with my sewing machine, did a zigzag stitch, and then cut up that purl stitch in the middle. And you can see now that I've added this ribbing for the button band, this steek panel just folds right in on itself on the inside. So I will come back and tack it down. Probably just whip stitch it around the edge to get it in there and lay it flat. But I could also probably just not tack it down and it looks totally fine. I will say I probably did not need to do a steek on this cardigan, because of the entire length of this button band, the steek only goes from here to here, which you can't see. There we go, we've raised her a little bit. So the steek really only goes from here to here. It's only about 9 inches or so that you do knit in the round, because once you come down and to the bottom, we have, you can see, so we have short rows back and forth that shape the hem so that it comes up, and then along the back it dips back down, and then on the other side it dips up at the side and then back down at the front. So she didn't want to be up anymore. So with that, I probably could have just knit back and forth flat instead of adding a steek for just that little bit of section. But it was a good experiment. I have since come in and after you knit the body, you knit the ribbing at the bottom, which I followed to the pattern. You come back, pick up for the button bands. I knit both of those. All of them have tubular bind offs. And then for the collar at the top, I think you're supposed to, it's a 3-inch folded collar, so you're supposed to knit to 6 inches total. I looked at some of the project pages and tried it on myself. So I tried it on when it was about 2.5 inches pre-fold, and I was like, I really like the height of this. Actually, I think it was about 2 inches. And so I only knit a 4-inch folded collar so that the entire collar is now 2 inches, because I thought 3 inches was just going to be too high. I know this is supposed to be more of like a jacket, but I'd like to wear it a bit more as like a cardigan, so I didn't want this too high. Also, I think I don't like a ton super high on my neck, so I just opted to do that a little bit shorter. And the pattern also has pockets on the front, which I also think I'm going to omit. I looked at a lot of project pages and I think I just don't want pockets, so I'm going to omit them. And so where I'm at right now is I am on the sleeve decreases. I have finished this first sleeve and I am now on, I have one more decrease to go on this second sleeve. And then I think I will have a few inches of straight stockinette before I go into the ribbing. I am so excited. It's so close. So honestly, all I have left is the sleeve ribbing and then attaching the buttons. I'm not 100% sure on what buttons I'm going to choose right now. There's a nonprofit store here in Denver called Recreative that's essentially a thrift store for craft supplies. So people donate and then they sell as a nonprofit these craft supplies that are used. And so I went in there and they are a great place to find buttons, especially now that Joann's is closing. So I'm still a little up in the air about what buttons I'm going to pick. I guess I'll show you some of the buttons. Let me show you. Moved her a little bit closer so maybe we can see the buttons a little bit better. So I had already some of these toggle buttons in my stash, and so this is what I thought of originally for this sweater. I do think they would fit through the buttonholes nicely. But I'm not 100% sure what we think about these. Which is why I went to the thrift store to see what I could find. And I do think there are some fun options here. So I did find these, I don't even know what you would call them. They're like textured and brown. So they're like textured on this one side and then plain on the other. But I thought these could be fun since they kind of play off the texture of the yarn with it being tweed. So I really like these. Then the final ones that I have are kind of reflective. I think these are so cool. So they're really shiny and reflective. But they might be a little too bright for this cardigan looking at it. I think my favorite contender are these textured buttons, because I feel like they kind of play in a little bit. you can see them, but they're kind of match the vibe. So let me know what you think, or if you have another button resource that you think would go really well with these. I'm open for it. Realizing buttons are it's kind of hard to decide what you want to do. It's fun, but it is like an extra step of like, oh, I need to go shop now and find something to match the vibe. I guess what's also nice about buttons, you could always sew them on. And if you find something later that matches, and you can always replace them. So I did have one acquisition with this project that I wanted to chat about, and I'll chat with you quickly about the yarn. So this is Kelborn Woolen's Lucky Tweed in the colorway Rust. I have 7 skeins of this, and this is my last skein. I had mentioned in my last podcast how I was a little bit worried, but now that I'm almost done with the sleeves and onto the ribbing, I think I will be okay. Fingers crossed. I do not know if I would have enough to do the pockets anyway. So yeah. But what I did end up buying is I did end up getting this set of the ChiaoGoo short needles. So these are the large size from ChiaoGoo. So everything in here is the mini needles. So these go from US 9 to US 11s. I had wanted these for a while, but I had held off on buying them until I had a project where I actually needed them. And so this was the first project where I've used needles large enough to warrant needing these short needles. I did start working on the first sleeve magic loop using the US 9s, and I just do not enjoy knitting sleeves with magic loop. I really prefer knitting them with the short circulars. I have already the red pair, which is like US, I think 00 up to US 3, and then I have the blue set, which is US 4 to US 8. So I now have a complete set of all the short ChiaoGoo needles, and it has made the sleeves fly by. I definitely prefer knitting sleeves on tiny circulars, and I feel like that's just, again, another testament to if something's not jiving, it might be your tool. Try switching out for a new tool, and it might make everything click. So I did that. I love these, and this will be done for the next podcast for sure. I've loved working on it. It definitely needs a block. She does mention Ozetta is the pattern writer, like short rows at the bottom. The ribbing just like loves to flip up. So it does need a block in order to kind of lay flat. And I think this will be a nice transition piece as we move into spring. I could wear it in the mornings, maybe when it's a little bit cooler, and then, you know, take it off, have like a t-shirt on underneath, and then that could be like my morning throw on kind of cardigan. So this is my mouse shirt jacket. I have really enjoyed working on it. I'm glad I popped it on my needles for this kind of transition season. It's been really fun to work on. So that is my main work in progress so far. All right, so then we'll go into a brand new cast on that I have. So this is a Oslo Hat by Petite Knit that I am knitting for my mom. She specifically asked for a red fuzzy hat that would match her scarf that she has for the winter. So I sent her some options, and we ended up picking some yarn from Knit Picks. So we are combining Knit Picks palette. It is a very bright tomato red. Yeah, so this is Knit Picks palette. It's fingering weight. The colorway is tomato. I got 2 skeins of this. It's 231 yards, 50 grams fingering weight. And then we're holding it with Knit Picks Aloft, which is a lace weight mohair silk in the colorway Salsa Heather, and holding both of these together. And I cast on the Oslo Hat. I am doing the women's size, the second from the largest size, and I've knit a few inches. So I cast this on because we were heading to a movie. We went to see the new Captain America movie, and I was a little concerned about having enough knitting on my Woolens and Nosh socks. So I started this since it's just stockinette in the round. I ended up not needing this for the movie, but I have cast this on, so this is kind of my now stockinette meeting knitting, out and about knitting. I will say the Aloft does have, you can see it sometimes, like a white core. So sometimes you do see it, but overall it is just a really fuzzy hat. Now, the Oslo Hat has a triple folded brim because you fold your ends together and then you knit more to then fold it up. My mom lives in North Carolina and the winters do not get that cold. Now I did want to knit this pattern for her because I like the Oslo Hat. I think it looks very classic. But what I think I am going to do is I think I'm just going to do a double brim. So essentially I'm going to get to the point where I need to fold this over, join the beginning of round into that where you knit so you get a folded brim. But I think I am not going to do like the short row in order to have that turn up. I think I'm just going to have that folded brim and then knit the stockinette part at the top, because I just really worry that the 3 layers is just going to be too warm, especially with the mohair. It is just going to be too much for a winter in North Carolina. But my mom specifically wanted fuzzy because I was originally just going to do DK, but she wanted fuzzy to match her fuzzy scarf. So that's what I think I'm going to modify. Just have a double brim and not a triple brim. Because I think that will be warm, but not like overly warm. So that's where that's at. It is very bright. It'll match her scarf. It's like a red and white plaid kind of scarf. So that's this. It's definitely my mindless knitting right now. I did want to start it now before it gets too warm out, because even now, when my hands are sweaty, I do not want to work on this. So that is something I wanted to get on the needles before it gets too warm, and I don't want to work on it at all. And I have put this in my Magner little waxed canvas bag. It's been perfect for both these skeins and working on those. Last work in progress. I don't think I've done much since I last podcast about it, but this is my Lewsky, which is from the Moon and Turtle book. It's a hood, and I have finished the like shaping decreases on the front. So you put the beginning on waste yarn, which I finally did. And then we have some decreases to kind of shape the opening. And so now I just have back and forth stockinette knitting until I start the top. And that's where I'm at. This is also one I should probably get it off the needles before spring rolls around. I'm probably not going to wear it this season, but I would like to get it done to have for next season. And I need to get it off the needle since it does have mohair in my hands when it gets warm. I don't like working on it with sweaty hands. So this is Rowan Kid Silk, and then leftover West Yorkshire Spinners Jacobs DK. I'm knitting this to match my East Wind jacket, which use the exact same colors. And so this will be a hood for the inside. So this is at a good place. I should just work on it a bit more. This will be a good project to work on as I'm wrapping up my Miles shirt jacket, and I'm a little undecided on what to cast on next, which is what we will get into now. All right, let me pop this in my basket. And this is in a beautiful sister bag. The tie top. Really like these two. So we're kind of moving into my future knitting section. And the reason why I'm feeling a little, I don't know what to work on. So because I was wrapping up this study session sweater and I'm about to wrap up my Miles shirt jacket, I'm ready to start some new sweaters, some new projects. So I think it was last weekend, maybe it was a few, I don't know. Weekend pass, I did do some swatching. So in my Q video and for my winter knitting plans, I had both the Sunset sweatshirt by Jessie Maid and the Stick Season sweater by Crochet. The Sunset sweatshirt is one that I want for myself, and then the Stick Season is the sweater for Shane this year. So I did swatch for the Sunset sweatshirt. So this is using Fiber Hustle's Targhee worsted base in the colorway 4077. I love this mint color. So I swatched with this. I did US 7s. I'm close in gauge, but I'm a little bit off. So I want to re-swatch this in a US 6 to see what my gauge ends up being, to see if it gets a little bit closer before casting on this sweater. I really want this for our trip home to North Carolina in the end of March. I don't think it'll happen, but it might be just what I'm working on. I really love this Targhee. It's really nice. It's similar to this. The reason I hesitated for a little bit is the Sunset sweatshirt is another drop shoulder, and this was a drop shoulder, and my Miles shirt jacket was a drop shoulder, and I was like, should I do a raglan? But I think I just like the Sunset sweatshirt, and I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna do another drop shoulder. It'll be fine. It's just gonna be the year of drop shoulders, I guess. Because the Stick Season, which I also swatched for, is also a drop shoulder. I did mention this yarn. Okay. So I swatched for the Stick Season for Shane. It is a very dark navy blue. This is using Imbue by Brooklyn Tweed, which is a worsted weight merino yarn. The Fiber Hustle, this is also worsted weight. But this versus this is so plump, and this is so much smaller. This is feeling a lot more like an Aran weight versus a worsted weight. It's just very large. The stitches are really big. This is also on a US 7, but the gauge is so different compared to this. And so I'm a little bit torn with this one. I think I also knit this on a US 7. I'm going to re-swatch on a US 6. I am a little worried if it's going to be too dense, but my gauge is so far off from the Stick Season with this. Technically I could knit like the size 2 in order to get roughly the size 4 for Shane, but I'm not exactly sure. Honestly, this is getting a lot closer to the Stick Season jacket, which Rebecca wrote for like an Aran weight yarn, because the Stick Season sweater is knit for DK, and I was doing worsted because this is what I already have in my stash. I bought this yarn for a sweater for Shane, so I was trying to use what I had, and that's the sweater he likes. So I'm trying to use what I have. And so I'm at this predicament of like, do I get different yarn in order to knit this pattern for him? Do I destash this? Do I knit this as a sweater for myself instead? Because this gauge works for the like yun sweater, which is one that has like a lot of ribbing at the bottom, split hem. It's really cute. So like this blue could work for that. This gauge actually matches exactly that pattern. So I'm a little torn. Like that sweater wasn't on my sweaters for the year, but it has been catching my eye. And this gauge works. But then I'd be back to the drawing board on what yarn to use for Shane's sweater this year, which could be fine because I did pick out this yarn and he does enjoy picking the color. Because when I showed him this swatch, he was like, did I pick that? And I was like, no, it's just what I already had. I mean, and he would wear this color. Obviously, this is like the exact same color as his Traveler that I just knit him, which is why I'm like, well, maybe I should let him pick so he can pick a different color. So I don't know. Do I re-swatch this to see if I can get the stick season to work for Shane? Or do I let Shane pick a new color and his own yarn for a stick season, and then I knit this as the yun sweater for myself? Let me know. I think this could be really cute. So I am going to re-swatch this because I just want to see which gauge gets me a little bit closer. I'm very excited. I think this mint will be such a nice spring. Oh, I'm so excited for this. And I love the slight variation in it. So I'm very excited for this one. A little unsure just because it's a pivot of plan. As you know, it didn't go exactly to plan. So sometimes you have to like adjust. So I do have a little bit of swatching to do. So while I'm kind of in between deciding what I want to do, that's probably where the dishcloths and socks are going to come into play. But yeah, that is all of the finished objects, works in progress, future knitting. So I do want to just share a little bit my stash stats just very quickly for the year. So I mentioned in my goals video, I want to use more yarn than I buy, and I've been very successful this year. So for February, I was able to get 13 skeins of yarn out of my stash, mostly because of this sweater and then the WAN Advent Socks. This was 12 and that was 1. I only brought 1 skein in, which was my WAN Advent Socks club for this month. I'll show it to you. So this is the WAN Advent February club. This is the colorway Adrift on an Inland Sea on her Superwash Targhee base. I love it. I love it so much. So this was 130 grams in 1 skein. I count it as 1 skein because I don't count the mini as a separate. I didn't go over my stash stats in the last video for January, but for the year, I am at a negative 16 skeins and I have gotten 672 grams out. So that includes like this grams out plus the grams in. I'm at a net 672 grams out. For fiber, I got 8 ounces out and then 4 ounces in because I got my Into the World club. This is my Into the World club for February. It is on the gray Cheviot base. The colorway is Woes Hollow. So it's like greens and purples and oranges. This is exciting for me as well. So for the year, I have added 2 Handspun Skeins to my stash. Those ones that I've used. So I'm at a +2 handspun. And then for fiber, I'm at a negative 4 ounces because I've brought 4 ounces in and gotten 8 ounces out. So that is my stash stats. So before we wrap up, I have one more thing, which was the Salty Blonde sock set, which I said I was giving away. In the last episode, I asked people to fill out the Google form down below. And the winner is Mary of Joyfully Knit. That is your Ravelry username. So if Mary, I will be looking for a message from you in Ravelry. Please feel free to message me at DoSoKnits in Ravelry. And if you can just let me know your shipping information, I will get this packaged up and sent out to you as a little sock set. So I hope you enjoy this. I think it's so cute. And yeah, that is everything that I have to share with you today. Thank you for hanging out with me. I hope you've been able to put a little bit of love into every stitch you're making today, and hopefully this was able to keep you company while working on some projects. So I hope to see you guys again in a few weeks for another podcast episode. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you again very soon.